Thanks everybody for coming to Dennis's, and I hope you had a great meditation. I'm sure you did, because I could feel some of the energies that you guys were tuning into and tapping into even here in Montana. So it shows how powerful a group meditation is when you have initiates and those who are very focused through the heart-mind connection in actually accessing these higher Buddhic mind fields that are the meta fields of very refined light emanations. And as you continue meditating week after week at Dennis's home, and you build the momentum together of the spiritual work that you're engaged in, if you have, let's say, a focus for each meditation, the Buddhas will come and great cosmic beings will support you in amplifying the collective mindfulness that you all are generating through the dynamic we know as the synergy of the collective. And this is why group prayer, group meditation, and what I would call, or the masters would call, group harmonics are so important. When you are in this harmonic state, because you first worked on yourself enough to reach that state of spiritual equilibrium, and then when you in turn collaborate and cooperate with others who have a disciplined life and who invest much of themselves on the spiritual path by engaging with others of like mind and heart, then you have the sacred dynamic of this amplification, which is very powerful. And if I can feel it here in Montana, you can be assured that other light bearers and light workers and light sharers around the world are also blessed by those quintessences that are emanated by your higher self through this work that, as I said, is also amplified by these great Buddhic beings. So when you ask a being like Lord Maitreya to come and be with you, they can't refuse, because you've asked righteously. And even a great Buddha, some call the laughing Buddha, some call the coming Buddha, who is invited, has to respond and sends an emanation of him or herself to the group. And, we hear of different masters who have, through their incarnations, they've been like an emanation of this divine being. Let's say Krishna is an emanation of Vishnu. Well, that's true. And you may be an emanation from one vantage point of a great cosmic being, incarnate in matter to literally transform and change the earth. So these are just some preliminary thoughts that Maitreya desired for me to share with you, because as the work grows and as more people come together and kind of sacrifice their time that they could be doing other things to enter into this group conversation and communion together, you will find that you will have deeper and deeper mystical and spiritual experiences within the group that you may not have necessarily had only on your own. You may individually have great depths of perception and blisses and ecstasies, and going very, very deep into your higher self in the way that's personal and best for you as an individual. However, sacrificing a little bit of your own personality by entering into the dynamic of the group individuality, because every group has like this group individuality, which sounds like a Zen concept, and yet it is. And it has an identity. That group then functions as a being, as one being. on behalf of the greater beings of light. And as you increase your own self-awareness and the awareness of the group itself, it's amazing what you can do. And your imagination may take you places that you didn't even conceive of before. You can do great spiritual work for the earth if one person can imagine it. One person can accept and believe it and have faith and complete and total acceptance that a miracle can manifest through the focus of your combined attention, devotion, and mindfulness. It is so. It is a reality. So that's what we have to keep reminding ourselves of. We are generating and creating this higher new reality. It is powerful, it is dynamic, and we should never discount it or in any way demean our ability as sovereign divine beings to engage in this miraculous manifestation of Buddhic mindfulness. So with that said, does anyone have any questions that you'd like to offer to Maitreya tonight?
I'd like to ask Lord Maitreya if he could expound on the Christ self and his office as the cosmic Christ, and maybe give us new insights on that.
Okay. Well, every planet in the universe is eventually inhabited by beings. From our vantage point on the Earth, we think that Mars and Saturn and Jupiter and Uranus and Neptune and Mercury and Venus are not inhabited by our type of life. However, every planet was created for a purpose and has beings that come into existence, but maybe in another type of dimension or a parallel type of universe that we're used to. They could be more quasi into the ethereal, and so we don't see them with our physical eyes. The cosmic Christ is a consciousness that extends way beyond one planet. It is the collective Christic awareness that is so expanded that it is beyond even one solar system, and maybe even beyond a galaxy. It enters into a cosmic state of awareness because God is everywhere, the light is everywhere, consciousness is everywhere. So when you have a being such as Gautama Buddha, Lord Maitreya, Sanakumara, who have generated a field of consciousness through their awareness one with the divine that is so magnificent and great, this could be termed cosmic Christ consciousness. And so this is what Lord Maitreya has done. He has moved even beyond the earth in his understanding of the dynamics of the cosmos, how life is created, how life evolves spiritually, and how we as a people upon this planet are evolving spiritually. And he's studied all of the nuances of how life is formed, how life progresses, how life eventuates in the ascension, and then an evolution beyond one level of awareness to a much higher state of beingness. And having studied this and mastered the initiatic cycles of light within his own being, he was privy to great cosmic masters from other planets and star systems, teachings that gave him a profound and deep, magnanimous understanding of how universes work and the systems, both scientific and spiritual, both very ethereal and very practical, work for the sustaining of life, for love to manifest, compassion to manifest. So he is this Buddha of loving kindness. That is kind of the key quality or virtue that he exemplifies and manifests, loving kindness. We have it in our prayer that we give to him. So he studied the cosmos and decided that loving kindness is what the earth requires, and this is what he is inculcating within the higher minds of the evolutions of light on earth. For us to generate this field of loving kindness. And this itself is what will help people evolve to, first of all, become the Christ themselves, to develop into that same spirit that Jesus manifested of the Christ consciousness, and then to evolve beyond that into a more universal or collective Christic awareness that allows that essence of the Christ to be perfused to greater spiritual worlds beyond our planet. Now, there are people on earth who have entered into cosmic consciousness. Alan Watts, has a book on cosmic consciousness. And there are other great masters, Omram Mikhail Ivanov, Peter Dunov. Even from Russia, you may have heard of the great artist who was a mystic who began the Agni Yoga Society with Helena, Nicholas Roerich. He had cosmic Christ consciousness, and he ascended after that incarnation, and he's brought to the earth this great sense of peace that is beyond the earth and extends beyond the radiance of just the aura of the earth. So when we talk about cosmic Christ and what that office is, it is something that is so amazing maybe to us, and yet to Lord Maitreya it's natural. Every Christ is equal to every other Christ at a certain level of awareness. So there are many Christed beings. Melchizedek was a Christed being. Enoch was a Christed being, who walked with God and was not, for God took him. We know Melchizedek was a great being because Abraham gave tithes to him, and it says in the Bible he was without father and mother. So obviously, this was a great being that we don't hear much about in the Bible, and yet in esoteric traditions, we know Melchizedek was this cosmic being. He manifests the same level of energy and cosmic awareness as Lord Maitreya does. So we have evidence even in the Bible of these great, great beings who existed eons ago, and even I would call him Lord Afra, and I've never used that term, Lord Afra, before. But Afra, a great master who lived upon the continent of Africa, ascended 35,000 years ago. You can imagine he didn't stop evolving then. He's grown in awareness and expanded his consciousness from the ascended state way beyond where he was 35,000 years ago. And it's interesting, I was recently in Africa, in South Africa, and there was a young gal who Afra appeared to twice, first in her home and then another time. And this was the daughter of a devotee of the Heart Center, Andrew Ross, who's the brother of Ralph Ross, who's on our council, and he's the president of the International Council. So Andrew's introduced his daughter to me, who saw Afra twice, and she said that the first time he came into her bedroom at night, and she was afraid because, who is this being? And he was so powerful. His aura was so transcendent, and his energy field was so intense that it was a little startling to her. Now, I think if any master appears to us, it could be kind of startling, right? Because we're not used to seeing with our inner vision or our outer vision a master. Yet, Afra, when she then realized who he was, she talked to her dad, and oh, that was Afra. The next time he came, she wasn't fearful, and he downloaded some information to her and said, there's nothing to fear about this thing. So, these great, great beings who have great self-mastery, who have given themselves to mankind by sacrificing as bodhisattvas to stay with the earth, often have great, great attainment beyond what they even demonstrate through selflessness and through oneness with God and through humility. And yet, if we could see the totality of who they are like Lord Maitreya, these cosmic Christs. So this is an office and hierarchy that's just below the Lord of the world, which sounds kind of iconic and maybe a little almost egotistical, yet it's just another office in the spiritual hierarchy, and Gautama Buddha holds that office for the earth. He holds the flame and keeps the flame for every man, woman, and child on this earth. There's like a ray of light that comes from his heart to invigorate every sentient being on the earth. Can you imagine the dynamics of this level of mastery and godhood, that you could actually be invested in attending to the flame within the heart of every sentient being, every son and daughter of God? It's a great and holy office. It's power, pure God power, and yet it's only won through complete love, complete compassion, complete selflessness. So, if we are to develop our own Christ consciousness, we have to be invested day after day in emanating and generating a field of light and radiance, holiness, peace, brother sisterhood, and of course love, so that that love field bathes the earth, bathes all sentient beings in that level of love. This is what you can do in meditation when you have meditated for years and decades, or through devotion have entered that field of oneness with God, and God utilizes your causal body, your Buddhic or Atmic bodies, your higher spiritual solar bodies, universal body, cosmic bodies, to perform the highest levels of alchemy for the earth and the evolutions of earth. This is how you become like a world savior. Or in the case of Lord Maitreya, he was called the world teacher, and then he passed that mantle to Jesus and Kuthumi, and then we heard a few years ago that the Master Omram, which is short for Omram Mikhail Ivanhoff, also is a world teacher. The cosmic Christ is Christ consciousness expanded to the cosmos, if you'd like to just make a short definition of it. Yet there's so much more that represents. And I think you have maybe now a little bit more of an understanding of the dynamics of what Lord Maitreya does for us and what we can engage in when we attune to his magnanimous heart, when we are invested in the same God virtue of loving kindness and joy that he's invested in, and when we enter into the spiritual work that he is initiating us within as spiritual devotees, no matter what organization you may be involved in, no matter what community. At a certain level, all spiritual communities that are based on eternal truths and the golden rule are one at an energetic level. The Buddhist communities, the mystic Sufis, the native peoples who have an attunement with the Great Spirit, the mystical Christians who understand what I've just shared, or at least some of it, and the Taoists and the Hindus who chant to the Hindu gods, knowing that they're not God Almighty, they're just intermediaries for the one eternal God, and who invoke that light through singing to Krishna or doing bhajans and kirtan. All of these groups throughout the world are holding a certain energy field through their auras, through their devotions, through their meditation and their spiritual practices, to collectively be part of the greater whole of planetary self-transformation and ultimately the ascension of the earth. The ascension of the earth will occur when enough numbers of enlightened, self-realized, and liberated individuals on the earth can collectivize that awareness to embed it within every culture, to energize all peoples upon every continent, and ultimately in every nation. We have a lot of work to do, yet the light is growing even as the darkness precedes that dawn. You know, the greatest darkness at night is right before the dawn. If you stayed up all night, you know it gets really cold and it gets really dark right before the dawn, because that's the way it is. So we shouldn't let the fact that we see the crumbling of aspects of our civilization and the harmonics of our society get us down, because we know it's the precursor to a great enlightenment, a great awakening, a great quickening. And we are a part of it. I mean, we are at the cutting edge of this great quickening. And lest we ever feel that we're not making progress or things are really devolving on the earth, which at some level some aspects of society are, we look at the greater picture and we know that there is a divine plan. We know that there is an investment from heaven in the earth of a great outpouring of spiritual light. And if we tune in and tap into that, then we can invest the totality of our being in this sacred process, be a dynamic part of it, active within it, rather than just an onlooker or a non-participant. You know, we're all meant to be initiates, which means that we initiate cycles of light through our chakras, through our auras, through our energy field, to bless life, to heal, to save sentient beings, to raise awareness. So the greatest thing that you can do for Lord Maitreya is to be an initiate, because he's also called the Great Initiator. Well, what does he initiate? Cycles of light, cycles of God consciousness, cycles of perfection and glory. And if we help him to be invested in this entire initiatic journey and process, then he can move on to individuals that are ready to be awakened and quickened and work with them even more, because we're kind of secure in the light. You know, we've reached a level of awareness where we're kind of safe. And this is where we should remain. Not that we're ever stultified or we stop evolving, it's just that we have to maintain a certain level of awareness and a state of beingness for the masters to trust who we are, to engage us in this higher spiritual work. So thank you, Dennis, for that question. Any other questions? Boris.
Last Tuesday we were discussing the difference between spirit and soul. Can Lord Maitreya elaborate more? Because Lombran was saying that the soul is an instrument of the spirit, and you can elaborate.
That's exactly what I would have said. The soul is the instrument of the spirit. The soul is the individualization of spirit for a particular individual, us. Spirit is expansive beyond us. Now, we all have our spirit. We have our essence. Yet the soul is the repository of all of the records of our evolutionary journey. It has our book of life, our Akashic records, stored within our soul memory. Our spirit is so much more expansive. So the soul is the instrument of our greater spirit, the great spirit of each one of us. You know, I love the Great Spirit because I studied Native American culture. And that's synonymous really with the Holy Spirit. Although the Great Spirit as a concept is almost like Father, Mother, God all wrapped into one through nature, through the cosmos, through the essence of light everywhere. Spirit is the essence of God that exists everywhere. We have a portion of that essence within us. We're not the totality of that essence. We have a portion of it, and spirit lives, moves, and has its beingness through us. And how does it work? It works through our soul. Now, in the Bible it does say the soul that sinneth shall die. I know that many masters and teachings say that the soul is immortal. And it is, normally, for 99.999% of all people evolving. Can the soul that continues to sin actually perish? Well, you consider a Hitler or a Joseph Stalin and what they've done. It's possible that individuals like that their essence is recycled, because God never completely destroys something. It's a recycling. It's like the evil emperor in the Star Wars movie that gets recycled. Darth Vader, casts him into that flame, but where did he go? Well, his energy was recycled, and then it emerges in a new form later. So I see what some call the second death, the death of the soul, is really just a recycling. So I believe it is possible for those who have encapsulated evil within them lifetime after lifetime to eventuate to the point where they may require recycling. But even that is mercy. Even that is grace. It's still God's love for the essence of Him herself that was embedded within that life form. So it's really not eternal damnation or judgment. It's just the process of evolution. So the soul is meant to be immortal. And how does it become immortal? It becomes sanctioned as an immortal being by returning fully to God in the ascension, in complete self-realization, in complete enlightenment. This is a process that for most of us takes many lifetimes, although it's possible in rare cases for this to happen and to be triggered in one lifetime or very quickly through a certain dynamic that's amazing. And you look at Lord Milarepa, and there's a whole branch of Buddhism that feels that you can actually reach enlightenment in one lifetime, and that Milarepa was an example of that. And also possibly Manjushri, Padmasambhava, others. The soul is our feminine potential to self-realize Godhood when spirit and matter merge as one. And the soul rises and spirit descends, and in the mystical union of spirit and matter, of spirit and soul, or heaven and earth, there is this beautiful flowering of divine light through love that manifests in complete self-realization, getting off the rounds of rebirth, and complete union with God, yoga with God. So that's how I experience it, that's how I accept it, and I hope that teaching serves you. So thank you. I saw a lady in the back that had a question. Yes, go ahead.
My quick question is, can pets assist us on our way? Especially if a pet chooses you? If you have
Oh, absolutely. Pets are dear heart friends. In our movement, the masters coined this compound word, heart friends. And we are all heart friends. And pets are wonderful heart friends. They have chosen us even as we've chosen them. And they are so heart-centered. They are so devotional. They often take on our burdens. And there are many, many instances of pets doing this for human beings and actually saving people because of their enlightened consciousness. I mean, the pets that are very sensitive and are very loving have done miraculous things. And I think pets are, for many, many people, almost more important than other people in relationships because they have this cosmic appeal of undifferentiated, universal givingness and love to us. They understand our vibration. they feel our vibrations. I mean, there is a dog that my family used to have that when I would come home from work, that dog would go to the door before I was even like half a mile away from the house. This dog was so sensitive that it could feel my vibration miles away. I mean, that's sensitivity. How many of us have that developed sensitivity? We do have it, but we don't always use it. Pets are reflections of our own consciousness, and you may have noticed individuals that are angry a lot often have angry pets, and people that are more enlightened and loving and kind have beautiful dogs who really are so peaceful and harmonic because the owner, even though I don't like that term owner, because I don't think we really own them, I think we're actually their caretakers even as they're our caretakers. These pets are so loving, so conscious. So of course pets are beautiful, and I remember someone asking a darshan question years ago, what happens to dogs? Is there a dog heaven? And the answer was yes. And a beautiful teaching was given about what dog heaven is like. And people who have had near-death experiences, some of them have shared that there are animals in heaven, but they're not quite the same as what they are on earth. They're very conscious. They don't have grotesque forms. I mean, you don't see crocodiles and carnivorous animals in heaven. The dogs are not carnivores in heaven. So they've transmuted any lesser kind of animalistic or gross type of vibration to be more of an elemental in the sense that they are the pure essence of elemental life without the impositions of mankind's darkness that has actually, in most cases, been the reason why they've kind of devolved into this carnal life where they eat one another. Animals eating other animals. I mean, mankind eats animals. So when we evolve to the point where we don't eat animals anymore, it's going to help the entire animal kingdom to then move past being carnivorous to being completely vegetarian. We have to demonstrate it first because animals imitate us. So we can't expect them to evolve to that point of not being carnivores unless mankind en masse reaches that level. So please consider, if you're not already a vegetarian, becoming one and evolve to the point where you can secure more of your nourishment from the sun, from live foods, from organic fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, some grains, and to live fruitfully more from the energy of God, from the sun and from what the sun produces on the earth. That was our original diet, which is fruits and nuts from trees. So I love dogs. There was a time when I didn't appreciate dogs as much because there were neighbors who had terrible dogs, and there was one neighbor who had like 20 of these sled dogs, and they would howl every night and it would interrupt my sleep. Fortunately, he moved away. After he did, I developed a much better relationship with dogs, and now I just adore dogs. I love seeing dogs because they are responsive to love from you. They respond to your love. So get down low, lick them. You know, they're not going to hurt you in most cases. Let them jump up on you, unless you're wearing white all the time. And just be with them because they love to be appreciated. They love to be loved and appreciated just as much as they love and appreciate us. And when we demonstrate that love and appreciation, it builds the field of elemental love everywhere on earth. And every dog who is loved extends that love to all species of dogs. It's not just their own species. It's amazing to see, even in the plant kingdom, the animal and the mineral kingdom, how when we love and appreciate one form of life, that life form, through its link to all other species and genuses or genii and families within that domain, can generate and expand that love and that radiance and that light. And this is how we can harmonize and bring peace to vast evolutions on the earth. When we understand the interrelationship of all life and the web of life, the antakarana of all of us as one. So, to consciously give love day after day in beautiful and magnanimous ways, a smile, a handshake, a great tip to a waitress or waiter, who's done a great job, and you smile and learn their name and appreciate them personally, like I always try to do. I ask the waiter and waitress if, they don't always tell you their name. And so I ask, what's your name? And then at the end of the interaction, give a good tip if they've given good service, maybe even if they haven't, brighten their day, and thank them by name. I mean, these little things are so important. Now, when you learn the names of pets, other people's pets, and call them by name, they will remember that you remembered them, that you chose to consciously direct love by saying their name. These animals will remember that, and the next time you come over or meet them, they will run to you and love you and appreciate you. Why? Because you've demonstrated that love. So yes, there's a long answer to your question, but animals are beautiful, and we should just love them, because that love will help free them from the impositions of negative consciousness of some people that is hurtful to animals. And we have to free them to be who they truly are, these loving beings. Okay, any other questions? Bob, I could barely hear your question because it was like interrupting. It was like...
He was asking about Maitreya's garden that he has. And Bob wants to know what he grows in there and what else, Bob?
Well, do they partake of food with their body?
Well, the original Garden of Eden was the schoolroom of the initiatic... Let me rephrase that. The original Garden of Eden was the initiatic school of Lord Maitreya. We've been taught that. So you can surmise from that statement that gardens are important, and growing trees, fruits and vegetables, berry bushes, nut trees, etc., is important. You learn in a garden everything you need to know about life. And those of you who are great gardeners and who have entered into the science of life through growing plants and trees, you learn so much about yourself. You learn about every aspect of life. You learn about nature, which is God's schoolroom and God's creation. So what does Maitreya's garden look like? Well, we are part of his garden. We are the trees of his garden. He is sowing us and watering us with his consciousness, his love, his loving kindness. And we are meant to expand and bear fruit and reseed the earth with love and light to start other gardens. So, yes, there was one original garden, and yet there are meant to be gardens of Eden all over the world. Now, who's going to plant these gardens of Eden? Well, those invested in the vision of Anastasia, who used permaculture principles, biodynamics of Rudolf Steiner, and organic gardening techniques to recreate and replenish the earth in its original God design. You can save the planet by producing your own food on 2.4 acres or 1 hectare of land, and eating live, fresh, organic, unadulterated foods fresh out of the ground or off the tree. It's the best thing you can do for your health. And as you're out in the sun, taking in the solar rays, receiving inspiration directly from the sun, who is the greatest exponent of truth for the earth, because we couldn't live on this planet without our sun, you will discover all the sacred mysteries of life. So, the great initiates are great gardeners. And the greatest gardeners are often the greatest initiates. Luther Burbank, George Washington Carver, they learn the secrets of creation and of love. And in Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, he's got a picture of him and Luther Burbank. I read a book as a child, The Man Who Talked with Flowers, about George Washington Carver, an amazing soul. Worked with peanuts and developed all these special products just from the peanut plant. And what Luther Burbank did with talking to plants and doing all kinds of grafting and amazing things and growing very large fruits and things that no one had done before, at least in our time on Earth. I think it was done in past civilizations, but at least in our time period on Earth, he was amazing. He did it through consciousness and love. So don't discount the garden matrix as a physical reality. And talking about Maitreya's garden, what does he grow in his garden? He grows us. So meditate on that as a Zen concept. And he would like to water us with his wisdom. He would like to pull the weeds from around us by having us transmute our darkness, and by doing that work ourselves, preferably, so that we can be fruitful and multiply. So Maitreya's fruits are us. Maitreya's trees are us. Remember, even Jesus said, I see men as trees walking. I think it was Jesus, right? Or was that one of the disciples? I see men as trees walking. Well, what tree was he referring to? The causal body of the individual, their higher self, in the form of a tree of life. And if you are living a conscious life, you have to get back to your roots. And your roots lead you back to God, lead you back to the source. And I think that getting our hands in the earth, working with the soil, is one of the most healing things that we can do. I do it on my property with my wife, and frankly, I would almost rather spend my time outside on our property in the garden than doing almost anything else. I meditate, I sing, I pray, I learn, I evolve, all through working with the elements. It's very powerful, it's very healing, and it is very satisfying. So thank you, Bob. Yes.
I have a question about this bird that I came upon, and it was a big, big blue bird out on my patio by the grapes, and he stared at me, just right into me for the longest time, with his black eyes. And finally, I was with a friend at the chiropractor. Finally, he landed on my shoulder, and she was freaking out. And I like birds, so I like them there. But I undid my shirt to get him off my shoulder, which took a long time. And then he went off somewhere. And then I was on the massage table with my head down on the table, through the hole. And I felt this on my arm. I'm thinking, what could be going on with that bird? Might that be some spiritual whatever, maybe a pet bird of a neighbor's? Was he high on my grapes, getting drunk? But he was just really staring right at me for the longest time with his black eyes. He wasn't moving at all. He was just doing that.
Well, masters will come in the form of birds. Spiritual beings come in the form of birds. And Om Ram has said this, and other masters have said this. And I've had so many experiences in my life of birds doing amazing things. Hawks flying right overhead when some major thing was going on. Eagles right over our house. Eagles swooping down over our car. And then birds in our backyard, not quite as awesome as what you experienced, but actually looking at me, and I knew it was the presence of a divine being. So masters and divine beings will use the talisman of a bird to do spiritual things to us and with us. And I think the gaze right into your eyes was like a ray of light, of understanding, of wisdom and knowledge that the bird, on behalf of a master, was conveying to you. So after an experience like that, write down what kind of comes to your heart and mind, and later you may be able to decipher a greater understanding of what that really meant when things outplay in your life, and then you look back to that time and say, oh my gosh, that was initiation of a new cycle for me. That bird was actually conveying something that I didn't quite totally get at that moment, but I got later because he was seeding me with this concept. I think birds, they are messengers. There are messenger birds, and birds can be trained to be messengers, like doves, were used, I think it's doves, were used for hundreds and hundreds of years or pigeons, pigeons to bring messages. They're trained to fly these long distances and go to a specific place, and they have that little clip, that they put with their talons, and then they open it up and there's a message. They were messengers, and they're still messengers. We have beautiful ring-necked doves near our property, the coo, and I think that they are representative of the Holy Spirit because the dove is a symbol of the Holy Spirit. So there are other great birds. Look at the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's a great symbol. The thunderbird came up in one of my dictations as a very powerful symbol for native peoples and also for individuals. If you look at the history of all the symbolism of birds, I think you'll find amazing truth and wisdom. My wife collects little bluebirds, not living birds, but little crystal and glass birds, and I bought her one for Christmas a couple years ago, and she's got 4 on our little windowsill that juts out from our kitchen into our backyard where we have bird feeders, or at least a place where the birds can land, and we love birds. There have been I think we counted something like 40 species of birds that we've seen on our property here in Montana. Some of them just fly through for a week period or even a couple days, and then they disappear. They're migrating. Others are here all year long. Birds are amazing, and they have a lot to teach us. There are books where you can read about the symbolism of the totems that the native peoples knew about what different species represent. There's something, I think, Animals Speak or something. It's a fantastic book. My wife has a copy, and sometimes when we come across an animal in our journeys or on our property, she will look up what this author of this book, who did a lot of research and a lot of study of the native people's history and lore and their wisdom teaching passed down over generations, what those animals represented. Remember, the native peoples had totem poles, the totems being, different animals. They each had a significance. It's very, very powerful, and there's a lot of truth conveyed in that. So what does the bluebird mean? I mean, the bluebird is a magnificent symbol, I think. And whether it's a blue jay or the songbirds, blue is amazing. I love it here when the yellow birds come because they're more rare where I live. And the western tanager is one that I love. It's very colorful. So if you've studied birds, you will find great joy in observing them, and there's whole groups of people that watch the bird, the bird watchers. And then they study all this, and they let people know, hey, these are, I saw these in this area. And they do a lot of scientific research as a result of bird watching, which is pretty cool. So, as a whole, though, birds are messengers because they fly. And the messages have to get from one place to another. And what better way to do it than through flight through the air, rather than just running on the ground. So it makes sense. So thank you. Anyone else? Are you going until 9 o'clock your time, Dennis, or are we about done?
We're about done. It's almost 9, isn't it?
Yeah, I have to get up at 5 in the morning for our broadcast service tomorrow. I'd just like to end by telling you all how important you are to the divine destiny of this world and to the plans of the Universal White Brotherhood. White not referring to race, of course. It refers to the light in our auras. How important each of you is to the divine destiny of America and the world. And you may be humble and you may think, well, I've tried to live a good life, but I'm nothing special. Well, you are special. What's special in you is the divine light that you emanate. And the more light you emanate, the greater effect you have on all life, all sentient beings on the earth. So if there's one thing that Lord Maitreya would like us all to know and to do, is to learn the science of emanation, emanating light. And through the simple practice of simply closing your eyes, generating a field of light throughout your entire aura, and then allowing that light to be projected in multi-dimensions and parallel universes everywhere, you will be amazed to experience bliss, divine beingness, love of the highest order, peace beyond your comprehension, and ultimately the joy of total oneness with God. The way to get to God the quickest is through the science of light and love, utilized every day in some way, in some conscious application of the greatest teachings of East and West that we all know, we've all learned. We've been part of these past civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria, golden ages of the past in South America, Africa, etc. We've brought the best of ourselves back to the earth in this lifetime to make our final mark on the earth, hopefully, get off the round of rebirth unless we choose to come back and help people again and again, and to emanate light, because the earth requires that. And light heals, light saves, light raises, light frees, light enlightens, light blesses. All those things, those verbs, light does. When light is first assimilated and then light is shared. So we say that we are light bearers, so we bear the light. We say that we're light sharers because we share the light. And we say that we're light workers because we work with the light. That's really what we are. We don't have to classify ourselves as anything other than maybe heart friends and light workers, light sharers, light bearers, because no matter what organization, movement, teaching we've been a part of or that we are maybe not a part of now, in our core we are light. And so that's what we can utilize for the victory of the earth. So thank you so much, everyone, for your patience, and I'm really grateful to see all of you again. I think I've met virtually all of you.
We have some new visitors.
Yeah. So good night.
Good night, David. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Praise the Lord. Okay, bye-bye.